This video is sponsored by Govee. Hey guys, it's Andong. So over here I got some jam, that's some raspberry and rhubarb jam, fancy. And also over here I got some not so fancy peanut butter. As long as it's crunchy, it's all good. Guys, please, crunchy peanut butter all the way. So you know where this is going. I'm about to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but the most important part is still missing, and that is the sandwich bread. But this is not just any sandwich bread. This is my attempt at making a very tasty, but also, dare I say, healthy sandwich bread. That's right. So we are about to put this to the ultimate PB&J test. But before we do, about that healthy part, let me explain. In my last video, we talked all about how sliced white bread became such a huge thing in modern food culture. If you missed it, I highly recommend you go and watch it after this video, but in the end, I think a lot of people will agree that for certain types of sandwiches, like the PB&J for example, fluffy sliced white bread simply works really well. Now we all know sliced white bread also has a reputation for being really unhealthy, right? But is it? I kinda had to know, so I checked the ingredients of a few different brands you can buy here in Germany, and honestly, I didn't find anything too shocking. I mean, sure, there's white flour, there's sugar, there's a bit of fat involved, but in moderation, these are not gonna kill you. There used to be a time where sandwich bread manufacturers would really add a ton of industrial preservatives, whiteners, stabilizers, and texture improvers. But right here, right now, I feel it's not as much about bad ingredients as it is about the absence of good ingredients. White bread is gonna give you calories, which equal energy, but it's very low on natural nutrients. That's why I just like to file sliced white bread under empty calories. And this is exactly where I see a ton of room for improvement. So let's try to make this healthy, shall we? So for my take on a healthy sandwich loaf, I decided to do three crucial things. The first is using almost entirely whole wheat flour. It's gonna bring some of that classic wheat flavor, but unlike white flour, this contains all the good nutrients wheat can naturally offer. Second, I'm gonna add a whole smorgasbord of seeds and grains. Not only will they add flavor, they will also radically up the nutritional value of this bread. A little fennel and caraway are a little bonus for interesting aroma, but they're also known to aid digestion. And finally, additives. The classic sweet note will come from honey and nothing else, and for texture improvement and a longer shelf life, I will be using wholesome olive oil. The only really tough choice I had to make for this recipe is using yeast instead of sourdough. I mean, I love sourdough, I really do, but for the sake of making a reliable and easy recipe for you guys, this is all optimized around using one standard packet of instant yeast. And speaking of recipe testing, before we jump straight into the cooking part, I think this is a perfect time to introduce you to the sponsor of this video, the Govee Bluetooth meat thermometer. It's called a meat thermometer for a very good reason. A few weeks back, I showed you how I use it to get amazing burger patties, and it works incredible for any type of meat, but you don't have to stop at meat. While I was testing this recipe, I actually used it to determine the perfect cooking time for this healthy sandwich loaf, which yes, that is definitely a thing. The Govee app comes with presets for different types of meat, but it also allows you to create your own, and that's exactly what I did. Also for my burgers, I used a big Govee Bluetooth thermometer, which has a display, but for bread, I'm not gonna stand there next to my oven for over half an hour, right? So I went for the smaller Govee, which conveniently is magnetic, and I love magnetic stuff, true story. I could comfortably just hang out next door or anywhere else in my apartment because the range of the Govee thermometer is actually pretty good, and all I had to do was wait for my phone to go off as soon as the bread reached 96 degrees internal temperature, which is perfect. If you are extra serious about baking bread like me, this is like the only way to make 100% sure your bread is done cooking, but it's also not over baked. So if you want to get your hands on one of these bad boys, definitely make sure to check out the link in my video description. Thank you Govee for sponsoring this video, and now let's bake some bread. We're gonna start this recipe with a truly miraculous method called the Tangzhong technique, and it goes as follows. You take a small amount of your flour and mix it with cold water in a 1:5 ratio. Mix it in well, and you should get something that's almost nearly water-like in consistency, until you add heat. So with your stove on medium-high, stir constantly as your slurry heats. As it reaches a certain temperature, the starches in the wheat will turn into a gel which traps moisture inside, making our loaf plump and tender at the same time. Turn off the heat, add cold water and mix that in thoroughly. Working with yeast, tepid water is perfect, but hot water will probably kill it, so take it easy. Body temperature is good if that helps. Now we can get to the actual dough. This is a good half kilo of nice whole wheat flour. Salt for some base flavor, and one standard 7-gram packet of instant yeast. Double check that your Tangzhong-water mixture isn't too hot, and then add all of that in. Now we can finish this with olive oil and honey. And please don't give me shit for the squeeze bottle honey, I am not ready to give up this incredible mass-saving format. So here's the thing you need to keep in mind working with whole wheat. It takes longer to hydrate. That's why first, I am just mixing everything together until I get a rough dough, and then we just let it suck up that liquid for 15 minutes. Make sure it is covered though. We don't want it to dry out. In the meantime, let's enrich our bread. Remember how the US Army really promoted the idea of industrially enriched bread in World War II? We're kind of going to do the same, only that we're going to do it in a very low-tech way. First, we're going to combine some quinoa, sunflower seeds, and crushed flax seeds. To those, I decided to add some sesame and black cumin, as well as a bit of that fennel and caraway. Of course, you can completely adjust this to your liking. Just make sure you follow this one part, please. It's really important. You want to first pour some very hot, almost boiling water over them. The idea is to quickly soak the seeds. This is going to soften them and also make sure they won't absorb too much moisture from our dough later on. We still have like 10 minutes to go now, which should actually do. When time's up, pop them in a colander and run them under cold water to cool them down. Again, we don't want to kill our yeast with too much heat. Get the excess liquid out, but don't go too crazy. They can stay wet. And check this out. Can you see how my seed mix here got a little bit slimy? I believe that's the flax seeds, and I found that this is also a kind of moisture retainer and natural texture improver for our bread. By now, the dough has rested 15 minutes and already feels much smoother. Time to add in our seed mix and also a small amount of white bread flour. Yes, I know, but a little bit is fair, I think, and it actually really goes a long way and helps in terms of texture. I'm letting my stand mixer do the work here for around 10 minutes. Yes, it's a bit of a luxury here, but you can also try doing this by hand with a slap and fold method, or even just mixing it around in a bowl will probably be fine. Ideally, you want to mix it until you can really start seeing long and stretchy strands of gluten. Get the dough out into a greased bowl, cover, and rest for 45 minutes or until doubled in size. Now pay attention, the right order matters here. You want to first drizzle some olive oil over your work surface and also grab a very large loaf pan like this, which you then also want to grease generously. Now rub that olive oil all over your work surface, turn the really soft and fluffy dough out onto it, and with your oiled hands flatten it out, roughly into the size of a rectangle, the width of your loaf pan. This next part requires some extra care, but if I can do it, you definitely can too. Gently roll up your dough away from you and then try to get it into a seam side down position before grabbing it from underneath with both hands and quickly nesting it into the loaf pan. It's actually okay if it's not 100% perfect. You can and should lightly wiggle it around in the pan for evenness. Now cover your loaf pan and let it rise for about 30 minutes. Yes, I got a little creative here, but I really try not to use plastic wrap whenever I can. Half an hour later, the dough has definitely puffed up very nicely. So hold on, let me just pop some of the larger bubbles on the surface. They tend to burn. There you go. Now let's take this into the kitchen where we have a super hot oven waiting for us, 250 degrees Celsius that is. Inside that oven is a little sheet pan I preheated along with it, and I'll first add around a cup of water to that for some very helpful steam and then quickly get our loaf in there. Give it around 8 minutes on full blast. That's when your loaf should get nice and puffy, and then turn down your oven to 200 degrees Celsius and finish baking for 35 minutes. When time's up, get out your loaf and there it went. Make sure to put it on a rack to cool and place on its side to help it hold its shape. Thank you, Papa Weissman, for that one. This really works. Okay, so 1 hour later, this bread has cooled significantly and you can already tell how soft and fluffy it is on the inside. But the bad news is that you really have to wait at least 3 hours until it has cooled completely before you slice it open. Trust me, you'll regret it if you do otherwise. But for now, let me just use yesterday's test batch, which I made using the exact same recipe and kept in a plastic bag overnight. Check out how soft and spongy it is. Definitely a good sign, but as you can see, if you squeeze it too often because it's too much fun, it will eventually break a little, so maybe don't do that. Now, being a YouTuber, I have lots of weird tools here, like an electric slicer, which honestly for this type of bread is actually really useful. But a nice and sharp knife, maybe even a bread knife, should definitely do the trick as well. So here we are back at the tasting table. This certainly looks like sandwich bread, it feels like sandwich bread, but of course the more important question is, how does it taste? And the only way to get a good answer to that question is to simply make a PB&J sandwich and find out. 2 slices, and let me show you how I make a PB&J sandwich. Crunchy peanut butter, we had that before. There is no excuse not to use crunchy peanut butter. I'm actually gonna suggest, that's some good jam. Raspberry rhubarb? This is the first time I'm trying this and it's promising. Anyway, assembly in T-3, 2, 1. That was anticlimactic. How about that? PB&J. Well, this is it, ladies and gentlemen, the moment of truth. Will my healthy sandwich loaf pass the peanut butter and jelly test? First thing I can tell you, I got these little bursts of flavor from the fennel seeds and the caraway seeds. They're not in every bite. Oh, and the black cumin, of course. They're not in every bite, but when you get them, you're like, whoa, what's happening? So it's like, I love that part. Hold on, let me get another bite to understand the texture a little bit better. Okay, verdict. It's great. It's not a perfect 100% replacement for white sandwich bread because in terms of texture, it's not as perfectly smooth. I mean, whole wheat flour is, of course, a tiny little bit grittier, coarser than white flour, and you can taste it. Plus, you got a ton of seeds in here, and that also messes with the texture, but that doesn't mean it's not a good sandwich bread. In fact, I think this is an excellent sandwich bread. And I was a tiny little bit concerned in the beginning about pairing those very savory forward notes in here, you know, caraway, fennel, with something sweet. But surprisingly, it works. Let me get one more bite, and then I think I need an unbiased opinion from you, Eypee. It's good. It's good. I mean, put something like smoked salmon or some deli meat, some, you know, roast beef or something on this, and it will be even better. But something sweet on this, like a PB&J, still fantastic. Eypee, your turn.
All right, my turn. All right. Whoa, so much more flavor.
The bread?
Yeah, the bread, like the fennel seeds of the caraway. Actually, I didn't know that it works so well with the sweet jam and the peanut butter.
Yeah, it's surprising, right?
Yeah.
It feels like a bread that would go well with savory stuff.
Also, the texture is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike white bread, this bread is like still moist, you know?
Yeah.
And if you eat it with white bread, the focus is on the peanut butter and the jelly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically just like sweet, and the white bread is only there to hold it together. But this one contributes a lot to the taste as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So many like flavors playing together.
What do you think? So overall, as a healthy replacement for white sandwich bread, is this thumbs up or thumbs down?
Definitely thumbs up.
Yes, I did it. Okay guys, you heard it here first. This is it. This is the healthy sandwich loaf. Thank you guys for watching. Try this recipe, and we hope to see you in the next one. You're in my position. Can you do the thing? Thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.